All right, here we go. This is the 20th episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. It's a good number, isn't it, Ercy?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, I think so. And for my very special guest for the 20th episode, I have here Ercy from the channel Circe's Booked. Hello there, Ercy. How are you today?
I am so good. I am so excited to be here with you. I admire you and your channel so much and everything that you do. So I'm just happy that you even asked me to come on here to be with you. So
well, the admiration goes both ways. I really enjoy seeing your enthusiasm, and I love hearing your insights. We've been in some chats together before, and I always feel like I learned something from you. So I really appreciate that a lot. And it's an honor to have you here. I'm so excited to get the chance to, we've never had a chance to just talk, the two of us. So we've always been in group chats, which have been wonderful with some really lovely people. But today's going to be about you. So, so I'm going to start with my standard question. And that is, tell us about your reading journey, if you don't mind. And my little expression that isn't really quite 100% true, but I like to say it anyway because it sounds catchy, is you are what you read. So what have been some important books and stories that have been part of your journey as a reader and as a person who is obviously invested in storytelling?
well, I feel like I have sort of like that classic millennial answer.
Good.
Like,
I think I know what's coming.
Yeah, it's definitely the Harry Potter series, right?
Yay.
But it's a little more. It's a little more than just like the culture of it when it comes to me. When it comes to that series, I definitely did grow up with it. I remember the first book I read back when I was like in the 5th grade. We did like a school play, and I played Hagrid.
That's not the part I would have guessed.
I know. I auditioned for Hermione, and I remember this because I was.
I feel like we've already uncovered just a fascinating fact about you, that you played.
Started off strong, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, Hermione, I would have thought, yeah, perfect. You would be perfect for Hermione, but Hagrid, okay.
Yeah. So I remember. This is too funny. I remember. We all had to like audition. It was just like in our classroom, right? And we all auditioned, and I was I projected very well, right?
Okay.
So my teacher at the time was like, okay, she had like this idea of how she was going to do Hagrid because, he's like huge or whatever. And so the costume was like this helmet with the head and like this veil, right? And so she wanted someone who can project through the veil.
Okay.
And so she was like, you're so loud, like you can do it. And I was just like, I don't want to be Hagrid. But I played Hagrid, it was fine.
Oh my goodness. Well, did you have to put on a Hagrid accent? So, how are you, Ari?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Are you going to show us the accent or?
I probably, what was it? You're a wizard, Harry, right? Like, that was so long ago.
That was perfect. No. That was perfect. I love it.
Oh my gosh.
You're a wizard, Ari.
You're a wizard. Oh my gosh.
What fun. Okay, well.
But yeah, so that happened.
Yeah.
And so we just, as the years came out, and the book kind of kept coming out and releasing.
Yeah.
I remember, like, I can never like afford any of those books. Like growing up, like a single parent household, like I had 2 other siblings. Like we always just went to the library. And I always borrowed these books from the library, and these were books that I always flew through. And I remember when the final book came out and I had a job. And so I was so excited to be able to just like afford to like pre-order the book, be there at release date, you know what I mean? And just like be part of the cool kid crew, right? Of like, I can afford the book, I can do it. And so I wound up getting the final book. And at that time, like I was kind of like going through stuff with like my family and stuff. So I remember like just sitting with my headphones. I would always wear my headphones. I would have my headphones on and I was just reading the book, and I just flew through it in like 2 or 3 days. And it's a big book.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
So I always say like it just meant like a lot to me, because it kind of like made me really happy and excited to be like a reader.
Yeah.
But then from there, that was when I was starting college and stuff.
Okay.
And I majored in history and like I took like anthropology courses and history courses and stuff, and humanities and stuff like that. And that's when I really got into like classics and stuff. So I think another one that kind of shaped me a little bit more would be the Aeneid.
Oh, neat.
By Virgil. And so that one was one that I really, really enjoyed. You know, we always read like the Iliad, the Odyssey, and like, those are really good too, you know, but I felt like the Aeneid was one that I really, really loved. And like, I would write like papers on it, you know, like if we had a choice, that was the one that I would choose to like write about. So I feel like the politics in that one, and like the enjoyment and the fantastical elements of Harry Potter, I feel like those two kind of like really made this.
That's fantastic. So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of connections between mythology and fantasy, of course, and they come from, I think, some common sources. There are differences too, of course, but it makes sense that somebody who loves mythology would also love fantasy, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when it comes to like, you know, the mythos and everything like that, you know, like another ones that I've loved recently would be like Circe, and like not just because of my channel name, but you know, like even like Circe, the Song of Achilles, I read recently. Even like those retellings, I feel like those, like I'm always kind of like drawn to those as well, but they have to have some kind of like political leaning characteristics to it to really pull me in. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that I really truly enjoy have to have some kind of political thing about it, be it like a colonialism theme or something, you know, things that tie back to like my culture. Those kind of themes too are things that really shape me, especially like thinking back in like school, you know, like school times, like I really kind of connected a lot with like the Latin American students and stuff like that. And I studied Latin American history, and, you know, obviously it's a history of colonialism and all that kind of stuff. And those were kind of the things that like shaped me in terms of like what I really related to and continue to enjoy and pursue, I guess.
Wow, cool. Yeah, so what are some, maybe if you don't mind mentioning some authors that you feel, and it doesn't have to be fantasy, obviously, it could be just authors who have delivered messages that resonate with you, and that you feel capture important themes in their writing. And because I have a feeling you know some good ones, and I'd love to hear about them.
Well, definitely like Gabriel Garcia Marquez would be the classic person. And we have someone here, right?
Oh, hello. How are you?
Say hi.
Mom.
Yes, baby.
There's something wrong with my cup.
Okay, I'll help you in a minute. I was like, I'll be good. I set her up. I was like, she's gonna be good, and she comes out in the first 10 minutes.
Oh, but it's like, fine. Children are always welcome on Dear Dr. Fan.
But but yeah, definitely like Gabriel Garcia Marquez is one that I always kind of refer back to, because he really, especially like 100 Years of Solitude, where he, you know, he incorporates the magical realism to help talk about certain themes about like colonialism and kind of like the modern day interpretation of colonialism, where it's not necessarily they're taking over, you know, the whole country. It's more of like a capitalist colonialism kind of thing. Sort of similar to like what's happening in like Puerto Rico and stuff like that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so he really touches on those themes there, with the banana company and all that kind of stuff that was happening in Colombia. I'm trying to think of another author.
Oh, that's a great one. I just actually just taught a story by Marquez in my intro to lit class. It's a short story. Have you ever read A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings?
No, I haven't. It's on my list of things that I need to get from him, because it's he has so many of these short stories that
I love his short stories. It's a great story, and it is magic realism, of course. It's a sort of a hallmark of his writing, but it does, and I've always been one who, I'm not that keen on distinguishing between magic realism and fantasy, because I think that they do a lot of the same things.
Oh yeah.
There are, you know, I know some people really want to assert, no, they're very different. I think they're more similar than they are different, actually. And I think that, I'm not saying that the distinctions are not entirely unimportant, but they are coming from similar places. Once again, I think places that require the imagination, and they can do similar things. And some of my favorite fantasy, as in genre fiction, is not that far, or even, I'm not even sure where a line would go between that and magic realism, you know. But I love that kind of writing too. It's a lot of fun.
I totally agree with everything you just said, because it's definitely like, some of it is more subtle than what we expect it to be, but at the end of the day, when it comes to fantasy, even where it's more the magic and everything is a little more like obvious, you're still grounded under that whole umbrella of what are the human themes that we're trying to address here. Be it, you know, overcoming some kind of battle, taking down the evil overlord. You know, it could be a very obvious like evil overlord kind of person, or like a corrupt politician in your town that's making life difficult for other people, right? So it's still, you have these very similar themes of wanting to express something that's very human at the end of the day, but it's the way that they express it, whether it's more subtle or more obvious. I think that's where we kind of connect them together.
Yeah, neat. Yeah, another one that I read a while back, and I really, in terms of magic realism, would be Isabel Allende.
Oh yes,
I believe you've read some of her stuff, right?
Yes, I remember like.
Hello.
Okay, Mama, let's go there. She's so silly. So like, yeah, like Isabel Allende, I read Violeta recently. And that was one that we spoke about during the women writers one. And so with Violeta, she kind of chronicles her life throughout like the 20th century, right? So she was born like in the 1920s, and you know, passes away during the coronavirus pandemic. And you see this gradual of like her life intersecting with certain things in history. And even though still talking about her life, you see like the pull of like how did her family react to the treatment of LGBTQ plus people, how it affected her family, or even like the Chilean revolutions and stuff like that, like the political revolutions, and how her family was involved in that and how she felt about it, or even like the drug smuggling that happened a lot in Latin America, and how her family was tied into it, and how they profited, and how they kind of lost themselves in that, or even like the drug pandemic, you know, like people doing drugs like in the 70s and stuff, and how that affected her too. And so it's I love books that do that that kind of interweave like the history with someone being very personal, because I feel like in those stories you kind of, when you read about those kind of things in like a history book, right, you're just like, okay, like it happened. But then when you read it through someone's perspective, that's where I feel you really understand something. And that was something that I used to like teach my students a lot. Like when I was teaching like social studies, whenever I would teach a certain subject, I would always pull from like literature, or pull from
beautiful.
Yeah, like pulling from excerpts from music, from poetry, and or wherever you can pull those stories from, because again, it's like you hear it, but then when you actually read it through someone's eyes, like through someone's perspective, like I feel like you feel more attached to it. And that's when the students would have those like aha moments that we call, right? and that's where they really like get it.
That's so cool. Yeah. I so agree with you too about like things like poetry. There's a wonderful poet, I wonder if you know her, you probably do, named Rina Espaillat. She's
rings a bell, but I don't
well, she's American, but with the heritage from the DR. And she's a marvelous poet. One of her poems that I teach every semester is called Bilingual, or Bilingue. And it's this wonderful poem that is what it does is it's basically telling a story of how her father wanted, as she was growing up here in the States, to speak Spanish inside the home and English outside. And he was very, forceful about that, and as if she could separate the two. And that's what the poem is about, because it literally has the Spanish, when he speaks Spanish, or when she translates words like my heart, and she'll say el corazón, but it'll be in parentheses. It'll be inside the parentheses, literally inside, whereas the English is outside the parentheses.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's really cool. It's a cool poem until the very last lines, where she combines the English and the Spanish together. In fact, she's defying her father, basically, and saying, I can't separate these two things. They're both who I am. They're both part of me. So just a very, very good poet, Rina Espaillat. So that's another good one for you.
I feel like that is sort of how I grew up. Hold on, I am so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. We love kids here. Whoops, you're still muted. Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
She's very excited to know that I am on stream right now. But I feel like that is exactly how I grew up.
Yeah.
With my own house, like my mother only spoke Spanish. And so she would take it really personal whenever we did speak like English in front of her, because like while she understood it, she was, she didn't want us talking bad about her, or thinking like maybe she didn't catch everything that we would say. And so at home we would speak in Spanish, whereas out in public, English is fine, because then we can get ahead in life and we can be successful and we can do benefit from that. But then at home is like you want to keep that culture alive, so to speak. So it just makes it hard, like for people like me who kind of grow up with both, and it's this whole like identity of like Latin American people where it's like you don't necessarily fit in both cultures. Like
I know what you mean.
I'm not,
yeah,
like I'm not.
Well, I
Hispanic
don't
enough
know
or-
what you mean, but I've had people explain this to me before, where I have a lot of students who are from various parts of Latin America and have immigrated here, or their parents have immigrated here. And I very distinctly remember we were reading an essay by Amy Tan, actually, who is Chinese American. And it was a very interesting, it was a little story actually called Fish Cheeks. And the message of it was essentially, she was embarrassed by her parents and their culture and the way they spoke and the way they ate and all these things. And they had these guests over, a white family, American family, and she was just mortified because she had a crush on the boy, and it was just all this, and it's really it's like a one-page story, but the mother, her mother took her aside after the dinner and said, it's fine if you want to be American, I get it. And she even gave her like a present, a mini skirt or something that was like, okay, you can be American, here's a mini skirt, but never forget what you are on the inside too, which is, this is your heritage, this is who you are. And we had this whole great conversation every time we read this essay or story by Amy Tan. And I had this one young man he's not young anymore. This was probably 15 or more years ago, maybe 20 years ago. But he immigrated from Colombia and was telling me that, it's funny because we were talking about whether you can, be more than one thing, right? And he was saying how I never feel completely accepted here. And that was very sad for me to hear, but I heard what he was saying and I believed him. I never felt like people outside my community regard me as really authentically American, right? And he was being very honest. And he said, but the thing is, when I go back to Colombia now, people there say, oh, you're not one of us. You're up there, you're different, And so the part he was telling me, I don't feel like I belong. I'm in this limbo, I don't belong anywhere. And I can code switch and I can be part of this and I can be part of that, but I'm also in this limbo at the same time. Yeah. So
I totally understand that 100%.
Yeah.
It's like my lived experience. But I mean, it's the great thing about that though, is that now we're finding a lot more people are more vocal about that, and they're actually showing and creating things that surround that identity of being like this dual in between kind of, like, just like you said, like, even though you're not 100% here or 100% here, you're not the only one that feels that way. Right. And let's create some kind of culture surrounding that. And so, like, I've been finding books on that, like Elizabeth Acevedo is one I can think of in my head that she like thrives in that in between,
in that space.
Like I totally, like, even like reading her stuff, like I totally relate to it because it's just how we grew up. You have family that they want you to represent them, but then when you go visit, they call you la gringa, the white girl or whatever, and then you come here and it's
exactly what my student said.
It's a weird in between, and it's like it's fun, it's cool to represent your culture and stuff. Like I always, I'm very proud to be Hispanic, Latina, whatever, like but it's hard when you go back home and you don't completely understand even like the slang, like when people are comfortable and they're talking and I'm like, what did you say? Like, I don't understand what you said, even when it's like talking with my own cousins, so it's a weird little limbo, like you said, but yeah, I'm just so happy to be like finding books that are representing that identity.
Yeah.
And
So
and
cool.
then I can celebrate it on my channel, you know.
Yeah, no, I love your approach, your attitude about this, because and there are some great, as you say, works of literature. Another poem that just comes to my mind is this great one by Gina Valdez called English con Salsa. Yeah, it's a great poem, and it's just so much fun to read that poem. And there's a bit of sadness in it too, because it is about the immigrant experience and missing what you had back home, and the longing that can be there, and the dislocation, but of course you come for opportunity, but it's this wonderful mix of English and Spanish, and it's just so much fun to read the poem, even though my Spanish is not that good. I always have fun reading that poem. It has a lot of very Mexican words in it, place names.
That's kind of hard too, though.
It's hard, yeah. Even for a fluent Spanish speaker from some other part of, some other Spanish speaking country, those place names are very tricky, I think.
Even I have to take my time, like reading some of, like, even like people's names, like one book that I want to read really soon would be the I have it right here. And I always have a hard time pronouncing the name. The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. Orquídea Divina.
Wow. Yeah.
I have such a hard time saying it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna get it. Like, there's like this pressure to like, this, it's your culture, you should know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm still trying.
Well, I can promise you sound a lot better than I would. So,
yeah, it's like it's like you want to be kind of like the representative of it, right? But then even when you make mistakes, you're like, okay, like I need to fix it, you know. But yeah.
Yeah, so cool. And it's just so wonderful. Like you were saying, how there are stories that reflect that experience and help you to make sense of it for yourself. That there are characters in these stories that you relate to, and you feel what they're going through. And in some way, I think while you're reading their story, it is helping you to process your own story, isn't it? And that's
even one that like I did recently, and it's not necessarily my culture. Like I put out the review for Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. And you know, he's Native American.
Yeah. And
they talk about this sort of culture clash identity. And you know, that book is like I guess magic realism, horror, you know, it's kind of like an interdisciplinary, like an intermix between the different genres. And even in that one, like I can definitely relate to that, like where he's talking about his father who passed away and how he was just like a regular guy. You know, he wasn't going to the powwows. He wasn't going to, you know, he didn't dress up in his headdresses or anything. He was just like a regular guy trying to make some money and take care of his family. And there's like this, like, oh, what could have been of him had he had been, you know, this representation of it. And there's just like so much pressure to like do that. And it's like, why can't we just be regular people too, just like everyone else? Why is it that because I'm part of this culture, do I have to be the end all be all of all knowledge of
the spokesperson?
And it's just like I know some things. I can share some things, but I'm still learning too, you know. And I feel like that's something that people of color or people, you know, even anywhere, right? Like anyone from wherever they're from, like Canadians not going to know everything about Canadian history, you know.
No.
You know what I mean? It's just like there's always this pressure to like know everything because it's exotic and it's foreign or whatever. But it's just like we're just regular people too. We're just trying to make our ends meet. We're just I
kind of know what you mean, because I've lived in places, you know, for example, I lived in Nepal and I taught at a university there. it's the greatest experience of my life, and the people there were
Yeah.
so kind and lovely. But I did experience a little bit of what you're talking about, like, oh, you're American. I can remember distinctly being with a group of people, and they wanted me to sing a song. I go, okay, well, I'm not a really good singer, but I started singing something that I knew, and they were like, no, we want you to sing something by Michael Jackson or Madonna, and I'm like, I don't think I know the lyrics. I don't think I know the lyrics. Or that was in a very informal setting, but even in a more formal setting, I was asked to teach. Now I'm a medievalist. I do like Beowulf and Chaucer and that sort of thing.
Oh, I love that.
So I was asked to teach American studies because, well, you're American, right? So you must be able to
know.
I don't think I'm qualified, actually. So
I mean, come on, you don't know? Like, don't they teach that to everyone there? Like,
I mean, I can wing it, but so yeah, I mean, I do sort of kind of, I mean, it's not, I would not equate it necessarily with what you're talking about because the power dynamics are a little different, but I was definitely asked to be the American, in certain settings, and when you're the only one of your sort around, you kind of feel like you're a little bit, sticking out there.
Yeah, I can see that. I could definitely see that, especially. And your family is from there too, right? Because you married your wife.
I married into, yeah.
Nice.
It's the best thing in the whole world is being a Nepali son-in-law. So
nice.
I did very well doing that. Yeah.
That's exciting though. So have you read like anything that's from there? Like, have you found any, what would you say, Nepalese?
Yes, yeah. So I do speak Nepali, and not particularly well. I do not read Nepali, but I have read things by Nepali authors, some originally writing in English, some writing in Nepali but translated into English. There are some great poets from Nepal as well. And what really I get attracted to are the really old stories. So the big epics of South Asia being the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and those kinds of things. Like I love mythology. I love old stories, and it's probably wrong even to call those mythology, because in this case we're talking about a living, breathing religion, that these stories are very much part of. But I love whatever you call them. They're just magnificent epics. So yeah, I don't consider, I'm not an expert on any of it, but I'm just an admirer,
There you go.
Yeah.
That's always good, because it's even like I read a lot of like the Greeks, the Greek mythology, the Greek mythos, and I feel like those are always popular, right? Like the Roman stuff, like even like me reading Circe and Song of Achilles. I feel like with those stories, even though it's not like I wouldn't say I'm an expert at that either, but because they're so popularized and stuff, and these stories themselves can be relatable when you think about like the higher themes of how it relates to humanity and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, we're all just human and we're all trying to live. And so whether it be expressed through this huge mythological I don't know, like it's expressed in a very colorful way, as opposed to maybe like a more modern type of story where there isn't any magic, or there isn't any gods coming down to interfere or anything. Like at the end of the day, it's all about people being jealous, people being angry, people being prideful,
or loving,
how you tackle those things. And what are the consequences of those actions and those feelings?
So beautifully said. I mean, one of the beautiful things about myths and old stories is they do show us how connected we are to everyone everywhere. And that's the good thing about stories in general. One of the beauties of stories is that they help us to understand how connected we are to other people, and people we might initially think are very different from ourselves.
Yes.
Whether it be in place or in time, you know. And it's amazing to me that I can read something as old as the Iliad, you know, or Beowulf, or the Aeneid, or whatever it might be, and recognize myself in those lines, recognize my fear of mortality, recognize my need to find connections to other people. You know, it's a wonderful thing. You know, I think that stories really do help us to place ourselves that way. And for me, the old stories, the myths and the legends and all that stuff have always been attractive. And like we said in the beginning, I think there's a connection there to fantasy. I think that's what a lot of us who love fantasy, we readily relate to that sort of thing, and we look for it in our fantasy. And fantasy can be so many different things. And I love the era that we're in now.
Oh yeah.
It's a golden age for fantasy as it gets
it's
more
so popular now.
popular, and we have more authors from various backgrounds doing fantasy, and I love it. I think it's enriching the genre so much. So I'm excited to see what happens with the genre. So
I am too, especially because like now a lot, you know, ever-growing TBRs, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the ones that I've been looking forward to reading, I haven't gotten to them yet, but you know, like the Poppy War, where it's inspired by like Asian history, or even like Jade City, again, another more towards the Asian, or Black Sun, where it's more like Native American. I believe. And so seeing those stories becoming popular is so amazing, and it feels so good to me, like to see like, it's even though the stories, like the classic literature, like the classic fantasies where it's more Eurocentric, they're still fun. It's not to say that they're bad. Of course
they're great too.
Amazing great stories. It's just we want to see a lot more of everywhere else, or even like what's this one called? Black Leopard, Red Wolf is right behind me.
Yes. I've heard of that. I'm very curious. Now that has some African inspiration.
Yeah, it takes place in Africa. It's another one I haven't read yet. I got it as a gift. I haven't read it yet, but like I'm just really excited to see them coming from other places too, and to add to the collection of like things from everywhere, right? Like we don't need to just read from Europe. You can read from other places too, and they're just as good, and they're just as entertaining and fun and
profound.
You know, so that I love that. I'm a reader of all over.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, like I have interest in so many different things, and so that's why I'm just like, you know, it's just really exciting for me nowadays, and it's like the TBR just never ends.
I know. As you mentioned, I have a special connection to South Asia, and there's a fantasy that I have I'm going to be reading in October called Sons of Darkness. It's a self-published fantasy, but the author is very much inspired by the Mahabharata, and that's the great epic that I was referring to earlier, and some of the fantasies that I love, like the Malazan series. It's really cool, and I'm looking forward to that and so many more, you know, wonderful books from all over the place to see what we can add to the genre. So what to get back to your reading journey, or were there any other important reads or books or stories that you consider central to your identity, to who you are?
I got another one. I got another one for you. So one that was definitely relates to a lot of the things we spoke about earlier, with it being a retelling. It hits a lot on the political, you know, political intrigue. That's the word I'm looking for. It has a lot of political intrigue, and it's a retelling, and it's fantasy. So I have here Wicked by Gregory Mcguire. This book is really fun. I haven't read it in a while, but I mean, a Broadway play was based off of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It'd be good, right? I read that back years ago. I read it years ago, and I just remember it just hitting everything that I loved. It's the retelling of
The Wizard of Oz,
The
right?
Wizard of Oz, yes.
Yeah.
And it's in the perspective of the Green Witch. So it kind of flips things around a little bit.
Yeah.
If being in that it's from Elphaba's perspective, and you're, in the original, it's just like this evil witch coming down to like stop
Right.
everything and take over and make everything her way. But it's actually like a person that had a family and had, things happen to her because of the way she looked, and treated a different way because of the way that she looked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All within this environment of everything that's going on in the city of Oz, like the politics, how animals, the talking animals are treated, and laws that are created to create these different classes of people in the story. And it was just so interesting to me, like because I love those stories that talk about like classism, and again, not so much like the racism, but how they interpret racism and classism with a different kind of people that are in the story, and how people living in certain areas are treated from the more privileged and closer to like the city.
Yeah.
And how they're treated. And I feel like those kind of stories, like I don't know what it is, I just really relate to them a lot. Not so much relate to them, but I find so much interest in those kind of stories, because then I can kind of relate it to things happening in society.
Well, that's exactly it, right? That
Mhm.
the fantasy story has almost an advantage, I think, in this way, where it has that psychic distance, where
Mhm.
it's not about racism in our world, but it kind of is, right? I mean, it's a world where there is racism, or classism, or whatever it might be, or it might be a patriarchal society that oppresses women, or whatever. Or it might be a society where those things don't exist, and that could also be a way of thinking about our own world too. But whatever the case, this other world where we go as readers on that journey and work out these things and encounter these things and struggle with these things, it might be easier for some of us to do it in those other worlds, as opposed to a story that's set in our world, which has it has an important purpose too. Stories that engage with these issues in our world, in other words, what people call realism, right? That has a place, obviously, too. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I sometimes even feel that fantasy has an advantage, because you leave behind our world, and in the process, maybe you leave behind some of your own biases as you're dealing with or struggling with or encountering racism or sexism or whatever in this other world. It can be a way of thinking about it without your own biases getting in the way, because it's in our world where you are invested, and you might have a position already. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, because I feel like it makes it easier to even like address those topics, like you said. And here we have someone here showing off her mazes.
Wow, that's cool.
Good job, baby.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do a lot.
You did a lot, and I'm very proud of you.
Yeah. Those
High
look
five.
hard. Yeah.
She loves mazes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of it's easier to tackle those subjects because you have that disconnection of, well, actually, I'm actually just talking about these people in this story that are representative of things that are happening in society.
Yeah.
And so you can address them and really play with it, and or even just kind of call out things for what it is.
Right.
And you have that ability to actually even do that and pull it off and really confront those issues and talk about it straight up at the end of the day. I think back to Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I feel like he does that beautifully with how you can tackle those issues and talk about how it affects how capitalist ventures of other countries in Latin American countries, how that actually really affects people, the everyday people that are living in those areas. And I feel like that can really, like, you can really talk about those and really see how it is within those books, because a lot of people are afraid to talk about those kind of things in real life. And people get really sensitive when it comes to that, because they don't, well, it could never be me. It's not me, or it's not, you know, it's not actually these people, it's just a certain group of, you know, individuals. But it's, you want to be able to talk about those things without the fear of, you know, being told that it, you know, this denial of whatever it is that you're actually trying to address. And then that's when you start seeing book bannings and all those kind of things that I totally don't agree with at all. Because if a book is worthy of being banned, then it's one that's worthy of being read, you know?
Often that's the case.
And it's like, what are you trying to hide? What are you afraid to confront? What is it that you're afraid that people would actually be waking up to? What are those issues, those themes behind the content in the book that you don't want people to read or be aware of? And I think those are the books that I love.
I mean, it's so ironic too. I think that when people try to ban books, they often succeed only in bringing more attention to the books. So it's kind of ironic, really.
I know.
That they would seek to do that even, but it is a sad fact that in the year 2022, there are people running around still trying to ban books. You know, and you do wonder, it seems to come from a place of fear to me. It seems to come from a place of fear. But, you know, so what are some, so we talked about some of the books that are important to you, and I think we have a good sense of where you come from as a reader. So why did you want to start a channel then? What's the origin story of Circe's Booked?
Okay, so that's actually kind of funny. That would actually kind of relate to maybe another one that I didn't bring up, of something that kind of influenced me. Maybe it sort of influenced me to start my channel. When the Game of Thrones series was coming on, right, I had already read the books. So whenever they were releasing each of the episodes each week, we'd have like a watch party, like our cousins would come over, some of our friends would come over, and we'd watch the show, and they'd always like pause and be like, well, what actually happened in the book? Did this actually like happen? And I was like the expert. I was like, well, in the book, I was that person for like my friend group.
So cool. So cool.
I was like, well, actually, Daenerys Targaryen was doing
It's much more complex in the book, you see, you know.
It's you know, behind the, you know, in the veil, you know, whatever it was, right?
Or this character doesn't even exist in the books, or like, this character in the show is really a combination of these two characters that they melded together.
That was definitely me, while still enjoying the show, right?
So cool.
And so I realized, like, you know, I wonder if I can kind of share that a little more. But I didn't know like how. Like I didn't know about BookTube. I didn't know about this whole like community that was online. And I started just kind of like looking up some of the books that I was reading. So, and then that's when I started encountering some people that were talking about the books that they were reading. And I was like, well, I can kind of do that too. And I kind of slept on it for a while. And I kept thinking about it over and over again. I was just like, I can talk about books online, like, because I'm always like, not bugging my husband, but like talking to my husband about books, and he'd love to just hear me excited about the book, but then he wouldn't, like, you know, he's not reading them either, so he's just like, oh, well, that sounds kind of cool. And I'm like,
he's being supportive. He's being supportive.
And I'm like, I wonder if there's some way to kind of like share this a little more. And then that's sort of when I started encountering not some, like some of the bigger booktubers.
Of course. Yeah.
And then that's when I started going down the rabbit hole of like seeing everyone that like I definitely interact more with a lot of like smaller YouTubers and stuff like that. And I just decided to just do it, just go for it. Some of my earlier videos are really cringy.
Oh, who cannot? Okay, none of us, not one of us is like, oh, my first video is fantastic, right? I mean,
it's so cringy because I was just like nervous, but I'm like, what are you nervous about? You're talking to yourself, right? But but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't know what it was that kind of just triggered me to just like, you know, forget about it. Just do your thing, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and along the way, like I had like this switch. I think it was when I moved to Oregon that I started making the videos while living out here that I feel like I've been more comfortable just kind of doing my thing, just letting loose. Like I used to have like a bullet point, like a Word document pulled up with like bullet points of things that I would want to hit. And recently I haven't even been doing that. I've just been kind of talking. Yeah, like
you're just winging it.
Just winging it.
Wow.
And it's been a lot more fun. I mean, my editing is it takes a little longer now because I have to take out all the ums. but yeah, it's just been fun. It's just like wanting to share that and especially seeing everyone, like the community that's been, you know, the booktube community, and just wanting to kind of connect with that and share my stuff too. Like I feel like there's definitely a lot of books that people are reading nowadays that, you know, it's sort of like the same kind of books, and it's like everyone's kind of reading a lot of the same things.
Sure.
But even when you do read the same things, you're bringing your perspective and your viewpoints on it. And I feel like that's the beauty of booktube. It's like even if you're reading the same thing, like two people are going to have different opinions on it. And I'm even in real life, like I'm a very opinionated person. Like you get me started on a topic, I can't stop. Like I'm one of those people, but like in a good way. You know, I'm not like I try not to make people like uncomfortable or
in my head I was thinking in a very good way too. So.
Like in a constructive way, but also being very honest. And I feel like that's how I like to kind of approach my channel as well. Just trying to be honest and but also having fun with it, because this is like a hobby, you know. I'm not making money off of it. It's just something I just like to do, just, you know, to share my thoughts on the books, because it's like I'll read something and then immediately I'm like, oh, I should have, you know, who can I tell about this, the ideas in this book, and like I get really excited about the books that I read. And creating the channel was just like such a fun thing to do. And even though it's still a lot of work, you know, trying to get the lighting right and all this other stuff. But it's a growing, you know, it's a progressive thing, and with time things get better. Even with this camera, I got a new webcam recently. For video discussions, and I'm like, you know, as I see, oh, I'm doing this more, maybe I can do this, or, you know, trying to add to it along the way, but also kind of being grounded in just like my love for the books, just having fun, just wanting to talk about them, and, you know, be the expert without really being the expert, kind of. Especially with like George R.R. Martin, like what do I know? But they're just fun, you know.
Oh my goodness,
little
that's such a wonderful story of why you did this. And I think so many of us who started channels, really, we have similar reasons, I think, right? I mean, we wanted to be part of a community where people are talking about the books that we love. And I think a lot of us don't have many people in our quote unquote real lives, you know, people that we know in person who want to talk or even read these kinds of books. So it really is about reaching out and finding people who are part of your tribe, who, you know, you want to make these
Yes.
connections because it's so much fun. It's one thing to read a book that absolutely moves you, and you just you flip the last page, you read those last words, and your jaw's
Yes.
hanging open, you're experiencing this catharsis, and there's
Yes.
nobody to talk to about it.
I know. And it's just like, who do I tell? What can I do?
Yeah. And then you find people online who are just, you know, having these similar emotions to what you're having. You're like, yes, 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 that's it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then you get to make these connections, and it feels so cool to make friends over something like that, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. It's so amazing. Or even like convincing someone to read something that you love too is one of like the best feelings too. Like even a more personal example, like with my husband, right? He was never like a reader. Like he struggled in school. Like he's very upfront about it. He's like, yeah, I hated doing homework. I hated doing all the schoolwork. He's like, that's why I joined the military. Like all this other, like he's just like, he's one of those. And then I was like, well, you don't necessarily, like it came to me one day. I was like, you don't necessarily have to read it. You can just like listen to it as an audiobook.
Yeah.
And then I think that's when he started, what was it that he first started? I think he started reading like the Harry Potter books. Like he read them throughout his life and he knows like the movies. And so then he listened to them and he was just like, this is great. Why haven't I been doing audiobooks?
Oh, cool.
And then and then he went on to like Game of Thrones. And then he's like, wow, the book is really different from this show. Well, it's different, but it's the same. It's like same, but different. And then he started going on through that. And then now we can actually talk about that too.
So cool.
Yeah. And then I think it was like the Aragon series with like Christopher Paolini. And then he, like my husband really loves fantasy and all that. And then that really was like the kicker. He was like, all right, I'm in the audiobook journey. Like, I was like, yeah, you should read like the Aragon books. And then he read through them. Now he has like a little book club with two of his military friends. And yeah, they like text each other all the time when they're reading all the books together. And I think like now they're all about like the Dresden Files. Like,
so cool.
They read through all the Dresden Files already. I'm like, yo, I've only read like 2 of them. You guys flew through all the books already.
Yeah, I'm on. I've read 5 of them, and I hear that the narrator for the audiobooks of Dresden Files is very highly praised a lot.
Yeah. Oh, he's so good. I feel like I'm gonna take this. I'm getting warm. I feel like he's
James Marston, is that the name?
Yeah, isn't that the guy that played in Buffy, right?
Buffy,
Mike?
Yeah. That's what I've heard. Yeah.
And so he I feel like he embodies it really well. Like so I've read the first 2, and just like that, he's just like, I'm just a regular guy. I just so happen to be a wizard. This is my job. I'm just trying to pay my rent. Like, I feel like that attitude really comes across in the way that he narrates it, where he's just like, oh, I have to go and get this potion. It's like just dragging him, to like, oh, Murphy's gonna be so mad at me.
I love Murphy. I love the relationship between Harry and Murphy. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, Susan won't stop calling me.
Yeah.
Like it's just they're fun. They're fun books. And just knowing that I was the one that told him to like listen to audiobooks, give it a try.
Yeah.
And him being just so excited about like the books that he's reading now, and he like listens to them over and over again. I'm like, that is so cool. And even like online, like talking to people online, and people be like, oh, you actually really like that book, let me give it a try. Or I feel like that, like I just love that, because the joy that I have in reading, I want others to have that too.
Yeah. Well, you're a teacher at heart, I think, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is, I think, something that we teachers experience, and it's the reason we get up in the morning and go to work, really, is when you see that light in the eyes of your student who finally is like, oh, I get this. I see why this is important. And actually, I like it. And I want more of this, right? And I think it's similar to what we experienced together on BookTube, is that joy of knowing that someone else is experiencing the incredible emotions and insights that you experience upon reading a story. And it's almost like you're reliving the story when you see someone else getting it, right?
Yes. Or even like, I can see how excited you were when you were talking about Dead House Gates. And you're like, yes, they like it. They actually, after reading it, like I told you guys to read it and you're gonna like it. And like we did,
That's a good example. I mean, exactly that. So, so right. And are you still reading Malazan? Are you still reading the Malazan Book of the Fall?
I've taken a little break from them. Not because I don't want to. It's just because it's like after the summer and finishing like the Dark Tower and reading a lot of these really big books, I'm like, I needed a little break and like read some smaller books. Says me, who's now reading Fairy Tale by Stephen King. It's like a big book. But I took like a little right after that. Right after I read Dead House Gates, I think was when I was reading the last two books from the Dark Tower too.
Wow. That's a lot of heavy stuff. So
I was like, I just need smaller books. Like I read a couple of novellas. I read that was when I read Song of Achilles, which is amazing.
Cool.
I just read like a lot of these shorter books, and now I'm like, okay, I'm in the groove again. I can read the big books. I'm not scared.
Yeah, good. Wow. So I am myself actually on the verge of finishing the Dark Tower series, and I have just the one book left, book 7, The Dark Tower. And I have to finish the book I'm reading now, and then I have one other book, and then Dark Tower. I got to read The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker, because I've been saying I'm going to read it for like 2 years now. You've never done that before, right? Where
never.
This book keeps getting kicked down the road on your TBR. It's like it's appeared on like, I don't know. I do seasonal TBRs. And I think The Darkness That Comes Before has been on like, I don't know, 4 or 5 TBRs videos. I don't know how many.
It's been a minute.
Like, so I have to get to that so I can keep my shred of credibility. So I got to read that, and then I'm going to finish the Dark Tower, and I'm so excited to finish it.
I'm excited for you. Oh my gosh, I really enjoyed it. I can see the criticism that people give it. But I liked it.
It worked for you. It worked for you. The ending worked.
Oh yeah, it worked for me.
So am I right? Am I right in assuming that because I really love Song of Susanna, book 6? I'm probably going to like book 7 as well. Is that a safe assumption?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Because on top of that, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you and we both kind of thrive on this, where we're very open to the author's intentions behind the book, and not necessarily so much. Well, I know for me, like I don't necessarily focus on, am I really gonna enjoy this book? I'm really open-minded in terms of what the author's intentions are and where they're going with the story. So even when people, I don't like the ending, I'm like, well, that was the ending the author wanted. And I'm very accepting of those things.
What you're doing is, and we're not spoiling anything here, but you're talking about the meta elements that Stephen King put into, especially the last, and there are hints of it in book 5 and Wolves of the Call, but it really gets going in Song of Susanna, and I'm assuming in the Dark Tower as well.
Well, he wraps up a lot of stuff in the Dark Tower, which I really appreciated, because there was a lot going on throughout the whole series, and I feel like it makes sense what he did. And I really liked it. I was, oh my God, I was crying. I was this book, I'm so excited for you to be reading.
Oh wow.
I'm so excited for you to be reading this, because it talks, he really hits on the character development and the character evolutions of all of the characters that you see throughout the whole journey.
Yeah.
And I love that. I really love when an author can kind of take their time and like develop a character all the way. I mean, I love novellas too. I get really impressed when an author can do something in a really short amount of space. But when an author can really take their time and like let you know someone's motivations, their feelings, how they're reacting to someone, how they're reacting to an event or whatever. I feel like Stephen King does that really well.
Yeah.
And especially in the last book. Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Wow.
I'm so excited
Great.
for you to get to it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ercy. So I had organized a palaver with Chaz, you know Chaz, and with Sarah from Sarah Reads and Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. And we had it, I think it was after I finished book 3. So it was a while back. And my intention always was to get that quartet back together again. But the great thing about a quartet is that sometimes new people come in. So would you like to join us for our end of series palaver?
Yes, that's
okay.
Of course. I would love to. Oh my God, talk about Roland. Yes.
Yeah.
Sign me up. I would love to.
Okay, awesome. So when I finish book 7, I will be calling on you. And the others. We're gonna get all of us gunslingers together. So
I'm with it. I am so down.
Nice. All right.
Because I have thoughts. I'm surprised I haven't even put out something on it yet. I've been sleeping on my channel.
Oh dear. So you haven't put out any reviews or anything on the Dark Tower series?
No. I did in the beginning. I did like I believe the first 3, and then I just kind of kept up with the with our video discussions on it that I was doing with like Jeff Lane, Stacy, and Joseph Carroll and stuff. So I was part of that.
Oh, some nice people. Yeah.
It was really cool. Steve was a part of it, and then he dropped out.
Oh, Steve did.
Yeah. He dropped out after book 4, but it's cool. I think
he talked about how he didn't really like it, Wizard and Glass so much. Yeah.
Which I get, because it's I see what Stephen King is doing, and it's not for everyone, where he goes off on these side tangents
or flashbacks or whatever.
Flashbacks and all the extra things that I feel are like important to getting to know a character, but I can see where it can be a little frustrating if you're just trying to like, okay, like, can I just know what's gonna happen? And it's just like he kind of just goes off on these little, well, actually Eddie is thinking about his brother and this past story with his brother. You know what I mean? And like, I get it.
I do too, but I felt that Wizard and Glass, the story within the story, it's an almost perfect story. It was just so well told.
It really was. Oh my God. And the story with Susan and him and their relationship and everything.
Yeah.
I thought that was beautifully told. And even though there's the things that she goes through with Rhea and oh my, it just kind of shows how horrible that character was, and how disgusting and people can get when they have power dangling in front of them, right?
Yeah. But you know what Wizard and Glass did for me? Prior to it, so with the first 3 books, I thought Roland was an incredible, iconic character. But it was only when I read Wizard and Glass that I felt like I could relate to him, that I felt like I understood him, that book humanized Roland for me.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my goodness, I see now why he's this way, And for me, that was just took an iconic character and made him human for me in a way that I felt very connected. So it worked for me. Whatever Stephen King was trying to do, it worked for me there. Yeah.
I definitely agree, because the first 3 books for the series, like he does seem kind of like separated from everyone. But then that's sort of revealed in Wizard and Glass, and you understand it more. So it's like you see like the other perspectives, like Eddie, he's like, I don't know what's up with Roland doing this. Like, why is he doing this? Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. And then you get it in Wizarding Glass. Oh, I'm so excited for you to read the last book because that's gonna come out even more, I feel.
Yeah.
Okay. Where you really get connected with all of them, really. Every single one of them. And it really brings it down. Like the gut punches are just gonna keep coming.
Yeah. I already feel so connected to the whole quartet, and you know, every single one of them seems like a person to me now.
Yes.
Even Oi, you know, I want a Billy Bumbler to be my pet now. Yeah.
I know. So you know how he has like those golden eyes? My dog has like amber eyes, and they're really big. And so anytime he like gives me like the big puppy eyes, like I think about Oi.
That's great.
It's really funny. It's silly.
Yeah. Yeah, so it just feels like Billy Bumblers combine a lot of the best things about dogs with a sort of intelligence that you know, it goes beyond. Dogs are smart, but not that smart, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nothing like a good animal companion to increase my investment in a story, right?
Yes. So. And then you get so scared. You're like, there better not be anything bad happening to this.
I know. Like if everybody in the quartet dies, I'm fine as long as Oi is okay, you know?
I know, right? I'm right there with you. I'm like, nothing better happening.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
There was I believe in have you read The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini? Like the Aragon?
I have read all 4 books. Yeah.
So like you know, when one of the dragons and his master, when that happened, I threw the book, like, because my husband like read it already, and he was like, he likes to know where I'm at in books, right? Like if he's read it. And so he's like, oh, where are you in the story? And I'm like, oh, I'm at this scene. And he's like, oh, okay, read it out loud. I want to know. And I'm like, read it out. I was like, okay. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reading it out loud to him.
Oh no.
And then the thing happens and I start crying. I threw the book. I'm like, how could you make me read?
Oh no.
And then I immediately grabbed the book back. I'm like, I'm sorry. Keep reading. I was just so upset. I was just like, no, the dragon.
Yeah. It explains a lot about a certain character that you meet early on too, doesn't it? That kind of loss. It has a big effect on the characters and on us, I suppose, right?
Yes. Oh man. So speaking of dragons, with like the House of the Dragon, have you started watching it yet or no?
I haven't started yet. So what I'm gonna do, my strategy for House of the Dragon is to wait until near the end of the season, get HBO for a month, and
nice, smart.
And binge the whole series, because I won't use HBO for anything else. So and then cancel it once I finish the series. So that's my plan.
It's a good strategy. It's a good plan.
Yeah.
We have like a little family network where it's like one person pays for this, another person. I have like 3 of them, but you know, whatever. Like we share it with like our brothers and stuff. And we all, so then luckily we were able to have HBO, and so we've been watching it.
Nice.
Because of that. And I'm really enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, because you're a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, obviously. So have you read the source material for the House of the Dragon, Blood and Fire? Is that what it's called?
Not yet.
Fire and Blood?
Yeah, I think
Fire and Blood, right? Yeah.
Fire and Blood. Yeah, Fire and Blood. I have it right here, but I
haven't read it
yet. Yeah. I haven't read it yet. I think because when I got that, it was at the same time that I got Senlin Ascends. I started reading that instead.
Which I need to read. I have that too. I'm going to read it fairly soon. Yeah.
It's a good series. I have to reread through it because I read the first 3 books and then I got the 4th one as a gift, and I let too much time pass, and I'm like, okay, I need to just go reread it. Are you able to do that? Like just kind of jump into a book after like a good gap?
I seem to be
can't.
pretty good at it. I think maybe I'm a little better because I read slowly. And I tend to not read a lot of books, but I tend to read them very carefully and slowly, and that helps me to remember the story.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Based on conversations I've had, I feel like I probably remember stories a little bit better than the average reader, I think.
Yeah.
But because I go
cool,
so
though.
slow, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like there's like this pressure as booktubers, right? To like gotta get through all the books and read, and like I take my time with them too. It's just like if it's like a big gap, then I'm like, okay, I need to just kind of then when I do the reread, I'll read it a little faster, you know. But
that's fair. Yeah.
But definitely like with the reading of slowly, like not taking too I think you said in one of your other discussions, you do like an average of maybe like 50, 60 books a year.
That's about right for me. Yeah. For this, I do read, of course, for my job too, which is separate.
Yeah.
But for this thing, it's probably around 50 books a year.
Yeah. And she's back.
And she's back. Hello.
Say hi.
How are you? Wow.
She put on makeup now, so she's
yes.
showing it off.
Very beautiful.
Okay, baby. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I do like an average, the same thing, because I read to her too.
Yeah.
So like sometimes it's like at night.
I tell you.
I know, baby. Go over there. So like at night, like I'll read to her. And she wants to read like 2 or 3 books, and then
that's so wonderful.
Yeah, like she's like, one more, and I'm like, girl, I'm so tired. and then that's when I'll read my stuff, and that'll be 9-10 o'clock at night. And then so yeah, I don't read as much as I would like to, but it's still like a lot compared to like a lot of other people where it's 40-50 books. That's like a lot. Yes, that's the one that we're reading
got her
now.
book ready.
What is this?
Wow.
Adventure stories for daring girls.
Daring girls. Wow.
There we go.
Nice.
So it's got a lot of little retellings, like Mulan, Athena is the one that we're reading now, and like
oh cool.
It's pretty cool. So she's okay, baby. Go. She's just like, oh, look, we're talking about books.
Might as well bring yours, right? Yeah. No, I envy you because of course I read to my daughters when they were little, and we got to a point where I told stories every night. I had to make up stories too, and I miss those days. I really do. And now they're older now, so they don't need me to tell them stories or read books to them. But
now they're giving you recommendations. There you go.
Oh yeah, they are. They actually are. Yeah. So
that's pretty cool though. That's amazing, because that's like, I'm excited for that, but I'm also like enjoying her being little and like reading her the fun stories. But then it's also like the newer books that they're coming out now for even like little kids and stuff, they're so good. Like,
oh wow,
they're really good.
Nice.
I think there was one that I read, it's called like Night Owl, but they're playing with, it's like an owl that wants to be like a knight.
Oh,
and it's so cute, and it's like clever, and he's like tricking this dragon that like wants to eat him, and he's like, well, actually you can it's like really clever, showing that you can be clever and interesting, and like even though you're afraid, like you can think your way out of certain situations and stuff. And
cool.
Those, I'm just like I love the books that we have for them now, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Yeah, so much fun.
But yeah, then it makes it a little slower for me to read my books, but I feel like I still read a lot, so it's okay.
Yeah,
I'm not mad at it.
You could put the books that you read to her on your books read list.
It explode. It explode. It'd be like 500 books. It'd be insane. Like,
there you go. That's bragging rights on BookTube right there.
Right?
Yeah. But so you like House of the Dragon. Are you also watching Rings of Power?
I haven't. Now the other one. It's just a party here today.
I wish my dog was here. She's upstairs though. So
Yeah. Oh, okay. And no, I haven't seen Rings of Power yet, but I want to. But it's more because I get I'm really slow when it comes to like TV shows too, because it's just like balancing time. But I do want to see it. I started The Sandman though.
Oh yes, I love The Sandman. Yeah.
I've seen like 1.5 episodes.
Okay.
So I'm very early in it, but the only one that I'm like up to date as far as like the newer shows is House of the Dragon. Like I'm on time, but
Wow. Okay.
yeah, but The Sandman, I saw like the first episode of that one, and it's really good.
I like that show a lot, and enough that
Yeah.
I actually went and bought the first 2 books of the graphic novel. So yeah,
Fun.
yeah, I like it a lot. I think that for me, I mean, I'm gonna watch House of the Dragon, like I said, but
Mhm.
I'd be surprised if I like it better than The Sandman. I think that probably the show from 2022 I'm gonna end up liking the most is gonna be The Sandman. But I am enjoying Rings of Power too, and I'm having a good time with that one. And I am doing discussions with that on that one with AP Canavan. So it's good, and I'm sure I'll enjoy House of the Dragon too when I get to it.
No, I definitely want to watch like the Rings of Power just because it's like I've seen all the Lord of the Rings movies. I haven't read it yet.
You haven't read it yet? Okay, I was about to ask. Yeah.
No, I haven't read it yet, but I will. I have like The Hobbit. I did film my fall TBR, and The Hobbit is on it. So
Okay, good.
I will be getting to it, but I know what's gonna happen. Like I've seen the shows, but with Rings of Power, like it just looks beautiful. Like it's like visually stunning.
Yeah.
I love when a show can do that, and I feel like that's why I really loved like the Game of Thrones and all that, because I feel like they did such a good job visually that even though there's a lot of politics that you need to keep up with, just the imagery kind of captures you and hooks you in. And I feel like that's going to be the same thing with Rings of Power, I feel.
Yeah, I think the vibe, because I've seen the show Game of Thrones. So I'm expecting House of the Dragon to have a similar vibe to it. And for me, if that's the case, what I would say to you is Rings of Power is more mythological. It's more mystical than Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, which is much more gritty and just like you said, political and whereas I think the best way to approach Rings of Power is to look at it as almost like mythology, right? And it highly symbolic in ways that you see and so much in Game of Thrones or that sort of thing. So and if you take it that way and you appreciate the aesthetics of it, which I think are marvelous, it's a beautiful, like you said, I mean, it just visually it's fantastic. So I think if you go in like that, you probably would get more out of it, I think, that way, than rather than expecting like a realism kind of gritty sort of, it's a different kind of fantasy, if you know what I mean. So it's, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, definitely more on the grim dark end of the fantasy spectrum, whereas Rings of Power, which is fitting because that's where Tolkien was, is much more mythological and beautiful, and and there's peril and there are horrible violent things going on too, but it's really much more on that ethereal plane, I think. So yeah.
I wonder what a Malazan adaptation would look like.
Ooh, yeah. I mean,
so violent.
It would be something. I mean, to enact one of the battle scenes from the book would be, whoa, yeah.
I know. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. I'm just thinking about that first battle with like in Gardens of the Moon.
In Pale, yeah. The city of Pale. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
That would be intense.
Yeah.
Just even watching it, just like
Yeah. I mean, it's so, I don't know if anyone is as good as Steven Erikson as describing a battle in such an epic way, and there are so many others down the road in the series, that
Yeah.
if you continue, you'll encounter these other, I mean, they get, I mean, they get big. So Memories of Ice has some really, standout one.
Oh man, that's the next one I need to read.
Yep. And he scales it down a bit in the fourth book. There are violent encounters, of course, but they're scaled down somewhat. And then he sort of brings it back up by book 6, the Bone Hunters. There's some massive battles there. And then really the oh my goodness, there's so many. But yeah, I mean, but the complexity of that series would mean that an adaptation would have to take one aspect of it, of the whole story. It would be impossible to adapt even just the Malazan Book of the Fallen by itself. I mean, there's so many things going on there that I think you'd have to pick and choose, a screen adaptation. Even if you got 10 episodes and 10 seasons, you couldn't do the Malazan Book of the Fallen if you were trying to do everything in it.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be really hard to pull off and making everyone happy. I mean, either way, anytime you get an adaptation, like nobody's ever like fully happy with everything, with however it comes out. But I feel like you have to kind of make those modifications to fit it for the type of medium that you're delivering. Like with a book, like it's endless. Like you can make your book as long as or as short as you want, and you can fill it with as many details as you want. But with a show, you got to be able to do that within an hour and a half, 2 hours. And thank you. And making sure that your audience is gonna stick around for it. Or even whenever you see it switching to like a graphic novel too. I'm trying to like if they work backwards, right? I think with the Game of Thrones, they did that where they started like releasing the Game of Thrones as like a graphic novel. And obviously they cut out a lot of details.
They have to,
yeah, like they have to. It's a graphic novel, like how the book is like this. You know what I mean? Like how are you gonna make that into a graphic novel? It'd be really difficult. I think even my husband, he found at the library like Dresden Files graphic novels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was like really excited about it at first, but then he got a little upset with them because they changed certain things about the character, but he's okay with things changing, but it changed enough where it changed the whole aura of a certain character and made it completely different. But to fit it within the graphic novel, they sort of just like changed the whole character. Not Dresden, but like I think one of the cops that was Murphy's partner.
Okay.
Like him up like a lot, and he was just like, I don't know how I feel about that. I get it, you got to shorten it up, but it just makes it a little more complicated. But I think if it's the other way around, like if it starts off as a graphic novel, then you have the room to like make it grow and really highlight a lot of the things that maybe the graphic novel just said it really lightly or in like a like hinted at, and then you can really explore that in like TV or in a book or whatever. I think it's really interesting how you can change things.
I think it's worked out that way for The Sandman, for example. It probably worked out well, and I think probably even House of the Dragon, because the source material is very bare. It's like the pseudo history, and it's pretty dry, and there's not a lot of dialogue, and not a lot of really fleshed out characters. It's very like a medieval chronicle, right?
Yes.
So I feel like that's an advantage in some ways for the showmakers, because they can put their spin on these characters without anybody saying, oh, you messed up my character, my favorite character is supposed to be this, not that. So
after every episode they have like a little behind the scenes thing where they kind of like the creators talk about like, you know, a character's motivations and compared, some of it was actually even compared to what like the book. And they actually mentioned that they were, because it was so vague, or maybe it was just like one sentence about a certain character, they can really play with it and not have it be like a big deal, because they want to make it work for the show. And you're gonna like it. You're gonna really like it.
Oh, I'm sure I will
enjoy it so much. I'm excited for you to like. I'm also, I want to take my time with the show because I know it's like each week, but binging it is gonna be fun for you, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh, no doubt. So what are some books that you're really excited to read soon and that you might be covering on your channel?
So the one that I'm currently reading now is Fairy Tale by Stephen King.
Okay.
So that one I feel like is the new, right? Everyone's like reading that one. So I'm only like 200 pages into it. So, but King is definitely doing his classic thing where he's really taking his time with the character, and you know, I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely a change of pace from the stuff I've been reading this summer, but definitely Fairy Tale by Stephen King will be one that I'll be getting to.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before with The Hobbit, that's another one. I need to like get it, you know, I need to just read through it and rip the Band-Aid off and just get through it.
And that's one you might even be able to read to your kid, or know.
That's good. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it is. It was written with that narrative voice of you know, kind of winking, and then it's very different tonally from the Lord of the Rings. It's a very different read. So it's a kid's book in a way, you know, but also one that some grown-ups like to reread lots of times. So
I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for it because I mean, like I've seen the movies, but I'm like, I need to just kind of get with it. And so I'm excited that you said that because she's recently been wanting me to read like longer stuff to her. So I'm like, maybe this might be the one.
Give it a try, maybe. Yeah. I read it to my girls when they were very young. So so I'm excited about it. And another one that I've been like excited to get to recently, I don't know what it is, it's just been on my mind. I read it back in high school, and that's The Lord of the Flies. Oh yeah.
It's been so long since I've read it, and I'm like, I don't know what it is. It's just been on my mind, and I'm like, I need to reread this one. It's been coming up a lot, like in conversation, you know, with like Banned Books Week and everything. And
interesting.
And I think it was one of those that have been banned because I keep seeing it like at the bookstores, like I don't know why. Maybe because it's like the violence in it and stuff.
There's a bit of violence, maybe that's why. There's a scene in there that I remember to this day, and I read it quite a long time ago. It's also a book that questions human nature, that portrays human nature in a light that is not exactly flattering, I guess. So perhaps that's why.
Yeah, so those three are definitely ones that should be coming up soon. If I can make the time or given the time to actually read it. With this little one wanting attention, which is fine. She, you know, they're only little ones, so I'm okay with reading slowly if she gets more attention, you know. So
it's so worth it.
But what about you? What are some of what are you currently reading right now?
So I'm reading, finishing up a self-published book by an author named Von Roycroft, and the book is called The Severing Sun. And I'm really excited about it because A, I'm really loving the book, but also B, I'm going to be doing, most likely, if it works out, the book cover reveal when I review the book. So
that's exciting.
The book isn't out yet. It's going to be out probably mid-October-ish. So I'm going to be I think the first to review it and to do the cover reveal. And then, so I'm like, I feel like it's a sort of I got a scoop or something, and it's going to be I think a self-published book that people are going to love, who love fantasy.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm reading a manga actually.
Ooh.
So I'm reading my first time reading a manga ever,
Yeah,
and
they're fun.
I'm finding it to be fun, a very fun
Mhm.
read. I'm doing Vinland Saga right now, and
Mm,
so I'm actually reading the third book. I'm in the third book as we're recording this. I'll probably be done by the time it comes out, but
nice.
um, yeah, I'm reading the 3 and 4 this week, and I'm having a wonderful time talking about I've already recorded discussions on books 1 and 2, and Murphy Napier and I have been talking about those books.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, because when she was on Dear Dr. Fantasy, I asked her, I don't know much about manga. People keep telling me I should try it, and so what should I start with? And she gave me this recommendation.
Yeah.
And has been kind enough to discuss the first arc with me, and so it's fun. I'm having a blast.
That's pretty cool. I like it because it's definitely really different because the things that like perhaps like Japanese authors like highlight it within like the mangas and stuff, they try to make it really entertaining and action packed, but then they still gonna infuse that like human motivation and character development, and they really push that. In a lot of the mangas that like I've read, I haven't read that many. I'm not gonna act like an expert, but
it sounds what you're describing is perfect. I think, yeah, spot on. Yeah. So, and then I'm gonna read, as I said before, The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker. And I'm a little, I mean, I know I'm gonna find his writing to be brilliant in many ways, because a lot of people said he's brilliant, but I'm a little scared of reading it because I think tonally it might be a very depressing read.
Oh no.
And I like there to be, I don't mind, obviously these are reflections of the world we're in. There's violence and there's suffering and pain and all of that exists. So it's something we need to deal with in literature. But I like there to be some beauty in my books too. I like there to be some kind of redemption or some kind of connection, something that uplifts as well. So I don't know if I'm going to find any of that in there or not, but we'll see. And then I'm going to, we'll see. But then I'm going to read Dark Tower after that.
Nice. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, and then I'm going to read some more Mark Lawrence, an author I really like. Have you read anything by Mark Lawrence?
I have not. It's one of those authors that I keep hearing over and over again, and I'm like, why haven't I read it?
If you do pick up anything by him, I really highly recommend Book of the Ancestor, which is that's a trilogy about assassin nuns. So
that sounds really cool already. I'm like, I'm down.
Yeah. The first book, Red Sister, has one of the best opening lines, and it goes something like, when killing a nun, I'm messing it up, but it's something like, when killing a nun, it is important to bring an army of sufficient size. So yeah.
Okay. That sounds interesting. It's like a hook.
It's a hook. It's
definitely a hook.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention too, because speaking of self-published, I'm actually on like a team with Fine and a few other people, like on Discord, doing these self-published science fiction, self-published something. I keep forgetting it's a really long acronym.
I know what you're talking about. It's the equivalent of the SPFBO, which is for fantasy. So, but you're doing the science fiction one? You're on, so cool. So are you like, you're one of the judges for it?
Yeah, so I think they have it like with teams and stuff. So I'm on the team that Fine from Fine reads is that she's in charge of that team. So it's like me, her, I think Ian from Ian Reads, and like a few other people.
So cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting because we've done a couple like reading sprints, just kind of picking some at random. Yeah. And they've been really interesting so far. Like I never want to turn my nose up to self-published stuff, because obviously you can find some gems. In any kind of writing. And even if it's traditionally published, it's probably, sometimes it's not always going to be that interesting either. But with the self-published ones, I really, we've been finding some really good ones that have been like really hooking us so far. So that's something that we're definitely doing like in the background until I think the end of October, because right now we're in this phase where we're just kind of sampling the books in our little group. And then I think after October, when we narrow it down, then we'll be like, okay, we're gonna read the whole book. So that'll be something I'll probably be doing towards the end of the year too.
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah.
It's
great. It's so great that you're participating in that. That's a great, I think, service and an important thing that we can do for the self-published authors.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think when I was talking to somebody and they said like, oh, I've only made like 10 sales of my book or something like that. And I was just like, why only that little? Or you know, or I think it was just like a video that I saw about it. And I was just thinking like, why that little? Why have people not heard about these books? You know, obviously, it's just hard to like spread the word, and every single review counts. Every, you know, even if it's just, if one person allows for another person to read it, even that would bring so much joy to an author. And you work so hard on your books, you know, and that's why I try not to be like super negative and try to find like what the author's motivations are behind the book, because there's just so much work behind it too, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They pour their heart and soul into those books. Yes.
Even just to like craft a story, it's like, you know, I used to think about like, maybe I won't put it behind me and shut that door, but you know, I was like, maybe I want to write a book, right? Like a Caribbean inspired fantasy or something like that, right?
Cool.
And
I'd buy it.
Yeah, there you go. And it's just one of those things, like there's just so much work, even just to create like an outline of it. Just to kind of see where a story goes, like even that takes like a lot of work, not let alone just even writing and starting it. It's a lot. And then you have to think about like the editing and marketing and seeing if someone else wants. I mean, you're in that process right now, so, so you would know obviously a lot more about it. But just to have someone like give a shout out to that book, I feel like it's just so important to do that, and I'm just happy to help, you know. Even if it's just wonderful reading through the books and sharing my thoughts and on my channel, right? Like even that, like, you know, if it helps, I'm down to do that, you know. It's not going to hurt me, you know. I get
that is exactly the spirit of our community. I think that's part of what we are, isn't it? That we're sharing our love of stories, and we're shedding the spotlight on stories that we think deserve it. And I think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm so glad that I know you, Ercy, and that I have had this really fantastic opportunity to sit down with you and have this chat. And so I think
it's been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, but you know, it's going to be fun talking Dark Tower with you too. So
I'm excited. So thank you for inviting me. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Dark
So everybody,
so
you know, I don't have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Check out Ercy's channel. There will be, of course, a link in the description, and it's called Circe's Booked. And there's a story behind that name too, isn't there? Yeah. It's so lovely to have this opportunity to talk to Ercy, and I have enjoyed myself thoroughly. And thank you for making me laugh, and and thank you for teaching me, and I really appreciate this deeply. So.
Well, thank you for having me. Like I said in the beginning, I really admire your channel, and just to be part of this series, episode 20, that's so exciting. Like, I'm honored. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, pleasure's mine, and thank you everybody for watching. Until next time.